Welcome to Ryan's Running Reviews in partnership with Roadrunner Sports, and today we're taking a look at the Saucony Kinvara 14. Let's run with it. Before we get started, I do want to say that these shoes were provided to me by Roadrunner Sports. However, no one had a chance to preview this video, and the file synopsis is my own. And I'd also like to say, please leave a like on the video and consider subscribing. Here we go. The Kinvara 14 got a complete redesign this year, and there's some big changes that we are going to talk about. If you're not familiar with the Saucony running shoe lineup, the Kinvara is their lightweight, neutral daily training option. Good for those that want a faster shoe or one that just doesn't weigh anything at all. If you want something a bit more traditional, a bit more kind of substantial, if you will, you can kind of bump it up to the Ride 16, which is Saucony's kind of flagship neutral daily trainer. But today we are focused on the extremely light and extremely nimble Kinvara 14. This shoe costs $120, and we actually get 3 more millimeters of stack height to the midsole, so they beefed it up just a bit. We now have 31 millimeters in the heel, 27 in the forefoot for that same low 4 millimeter heel to toe drop. And even though the midsole got larger, they found a way to make it lose weight. It went down about 2.7% with regard to weight, bringing us to 7 ounces exactly, which is crazy light considering that's 1.8 ounces less compared to the Ride 16. So there is some clear daylight between the two models, and the Kinvara is just an incredibly light option. Moving on to the upper, we do have a very familiar pattern here. It looks very much like the upper we see on the Endorphin Pro 3. I think they call it like a fishnet engineered mesh, where basically you have these really large holes and tiny bits of string that run across, creating a very open, very breathable experience. The big difference here with the Kinvara is you have an internal engineered mesh liner. The tongue is fully gusseted and connects into that internal liner. So you have 2 layers of fabric, that outer layer you can see here, and then that inner layer of engineered mesh that sits next to your foot. As far as the fit goes, it did fit true to size with regard to length, although I will say it was a rather narrow experience. It does come in wide, so if you have a higher volume foot, you might want to bump it up to that wide edition. The tongue is fully gusseted, like I mentioned before. It's on the more minimal side of things, but has one small trick up its sleeve. It has these small individual foam blocks that run down the center of the tongue itself to help prevent lace pressure. And I think it does a good job, allows the tongue to remain minimal while giving you some additional comfort. And I think the implementation here works quite well. Moving to the back of the shoe, the heel counter is rather flexible and does give you some light cushioning. Although I will say the heel counter did let me down. I had some heel lift while using the Kinvara 14, and it just didn't live up to my Saucony kind of expectations. Saucony usually does a great job with the overall fit and lockdown, and the Kinvara just felt a bit kind of just straight up and down in the heel. And again, that heel lift kind of became an issue. Saucony gave us a surprise here on the Kinvara 14. They added a Power Run Plus insert. Now, Power Run Plus is a more dense, softer foam compared to the Power Run we see in the midsole. And it's actually surprising because the Kinvara, again, is their lightweight neutral daily trainer, and Power Run Plus is a bit heavier compared to most other materials. So theoretically, you can make the Kinvara weigh less than 7 ounces if you swapped it out for a traditional insert. They do this with a lot of their running shoes. You see this Power Run Plus insert on the Ride, the Guide, and the Triumph. I don't typically notice it when I'm using the shoe, but I think it is kind of a nice hidden touch if you want to kind of swap it out or customize your running experience. The midsole has been kind of completely revamped. Like we talked about before, you get 3 more millimeters of stack height with that same 4 millimeter heel to toe drop. They also added a more aggressive rocker geometry to it with new foam sidewalls on both the lateral and medial side to keep your foot contained. And yes, the midsole is still Power Run foam, which is an EVA based material that does run to the firmer side of things. It is kind of interesting to see the Kinvara kind of get larger over the years. I've always thought of it as a more minimal shoe, and now that we have a larger midsole, it's getting awfully close to the Ride 16 over in the corner there. So what is the difference between the Kinvara now and the Ride? Basically, there's a 4 millimeter difference in the heel stack height. The Ride 16 has an 8 millimeter drop, while the Kinvara has a 4 millimeter drop. So you get a bit more cushioning in the heel with the Ride 16 and a bit less here in the Kinvara 14. I found it quite easy to pick up the pace in the Kinvara 14, mainly because the shoe is just so darn light, and that new rocker geometry I think works quite well with the thicker midsole. But with that thicker midsole, you have no ground feel whatsoever. But I think that's kind of a nice thing if you're someone who likes the ride and just wants a lighter option with a similar amount of midsole feel. I think the Kinvara will be right up your alley. But for those that want a true kind of lightweight minimal running shoe, you might be a bit disappointed by this new beefed up option that still, I guess, loses weight, which I think is kind of funny and interesting. In classic Kinvara fashion, we do have some small bits of strategic rubber in the toe area and the heel area. With this lack of rubber, I will say the shoe is a bit more flexible compared to something like the Ride 16. It moves quite nicely with your foot, and it's part of the reason why the shoe only weighs 7 ounces. At the end of the day, this complete redesign may be polarizing for some with its new, larger midsole, but the shoe did lose roughly 2.7% in the weight department. If you're a fan of the ride, I would consider trying out the Kinvara now, as the midsoles are getting awfully close and this shoe feels like you're wearing nothing at all. My only major complaints were I had a bit of heel lift. I hope they redesign it, maybe just give us a more kind of classic traditional Saucony heel counter. Most of the time Saucony crushes it. I was just a bit disappointed here, and I do think the shoe was rather narrow, and yes, it comes in wide, but I would appreciate just a bit more room. Well, let me know down in the comments, what do you think of the direction Saucony is taking the Kinvara, and do you think you're going to pick it up? I would love to hear from you. Well, I'm Ryan from Ryan's Running Reviews, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Thanks.